lots of people have the ability to visualize, and like it's almost like they're watching a movie. It's almost like they're dreaming, like they can see in color and vividness. I can't do it. I've tried for years. I can't do that, but it doesn't mean I can't visualize.
We are live. We're going to rock and roll, guys. I am here. We're going deep into the science of visualization and how visualization can positively impact your business, whether you know it or not. So I've got two amazing guest hosts with me today, co-hosts, rock stars of real estate. I'm just trying to see if I can make Brian blush. Brian Curtis, currently out of, he runs an amazing team out of Arkansas. He also resides in Boulder. He's a man of many states. Yep. He's a fantastic real estate coach, trainer, speaker, man of mystery. And
yeah, mostly a mystery, that's for sure.
and we've got also Priyanka Johri from Houston, Texas. Priyanka is an amazing real estate agent, also passionate. She's more passionate than selling homes. She's probably passionate about saving animals and assisting. I mean, how do your assisted living facilities? Yeah, the elderly.
My elderly, yeah.
She doesn't like normal people, only the elderly,
no.
Right?
I like kids, and then I like really, really senior people. Everything in between, no. I do not like people.
We're just going to make it for a really fun discussion today on the science of visualization. So if you were with us 2 weeks ago, we took our first slant into the science of visualization. Brian, can you say that word 3 times fast?
No.
Okay, good.
What else you got?
but we wanted to do it again. And yeah, so absolutely. Jake just sent me a private message. You may make me the host, Jake. Rock and roll. I am now the host. I am going to run this show, and I'm Jesse Zagorsky from San Diego. We are going to dive into part 2 on the science of visualization. I believe there are so many powerful ways we can use this in our business. I'm just going to start really easy and high level. Brian, on like a day-to-day basis, are you doing visualization? What's your connection to visualization?
Sure. I do it in a bunch of different ways, but visualization, I think, is a little bit of a misnomer in that people only identify visually when they say that, but there's other things. There's auditory and kinesthetic that all goes into what I would refer to as visualization. So oftentimes I'll visualize the outcome I'm looking for. And, I'm a big golfer, and I know it has nothing to do with, I didn't say I was a good golfer, by the way. I said I'm a big golfer, but, when I play golf, I visualize what I want a shot to look like. I visualize what an interaction is going to look like with a client. So it's funny. Your brain doesn't know the difference. You guys probably covered this last time, but your brain doesn't know the difference between a true experience and something that you visualize. So, and let me say this, I am, there's 3 general modalities that people learn. Visual, auditory, kinesthetic. The visual probably.
Can I slow you down? Because in case people have never heard that, will you just break down what those 3 things are? Like, let's start from a framework there. What are the 3 areas the way that you learn? Visually,
I think that's, auditorily, or in other words, sounds. And then kinesthetic is feelings. So those are, VAC is what I've heard that. And there's another one that's called auditory digital, but that's for a different webinar. And those are weird people who have that, and a lot of good things that come with that. But 95% of us are going to fall into visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learners. So here's the reason I even brought that up. Lots of people have the ability to visualize, and like it's almost like they're watching a movie. It's almost like they're dreaming, like they can see in color and vividness. I can't do it. I've tried for years. I can't do that, but it doesn't mean I can't visualize. And so that's what I want. That's the reason I bring up visual, auditory, kinesthetic, because I can feel it, because I'm very kinesthetic. I'm also relatively auditory. So I can see it. I can feel it. I kind of see it. It's a little bit blurry for me, but I can feel it and I can hear it. And that allows me to have this. People laugh at me. My wife does all the time. I would drive down the road and I have conversations with myself. I have to turn off the radio so I can have the entire conversation. I'm a very auditory person. So I don't know if that answers your question. I can't remember what the question was, but that's what I got to say.
But it does give us a jumping off point, because Priyanka, if you remember the way we were describing last week, 2 weeks ago, you and I had a little different ways of talking about visualization. I didn't recognize that distinction. I love that. So Priyanka, for you, are you auditory, visual, or kinesthetic?
Visual. So I see it in 3D. Right. So I have been a pilot, I have been a geologist. For both those 2 professions, you have to be able to visualize in 3D. And I still do. And I think I had that. It's not that's something you can develop. I think you have to have it like Brian is talking about, but then you can get it sharper, right? So when I joined those professions, I think that become sharper for me, and I still do it, which drive people nuts. So when I'm talking to my assistants, I'm just like, okay, so this is a project, this is what we need to go, and we need to do this, this, this. They tell me I'm all over the place because they see linearly, right? And I need those people to organize everything, and people who are very organized are very linear. But for me, if I'm doing something over here, it makes sense for me to do something over here too. But for them, there are 6 different steps. But for me, it's just like, but this is all interconnected. So right now we are here, let's do this also while we are at it, and forget about those 6 or 7 steps that we have to do because we are going to get to it. And that's where I think a lot of problem is. Like, I need those people, but I cannot think like them, and they can't think like me. And that's where it comes to where, like, okay, you go do it your way versus like, me trying to make it happen.
And it's funny as agents, because I bet there's agents listening that are on all sides of the spectrum. And without going down a science rabbit hole, but I think Brian and I both can agree, and probably you, Priyanka, we all can get a little nerdy with this. If we did a functional MRI, like an fMRI of all of our brains, you're going to notice people's brains lighting up differently when they do different tasks. And your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere are responsible for different things. But people who think non-linearly, they actually have shown in MRIs that their brains make connections in different ways that the people who think more linearly. You're connecting hemispheres of your brain that just, it's how you're wired, and you've grooved those pathways and developed it over time, which is a useful skill, but doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just different.
Exactly.
Well, and I'll add this, Jesse, what you just talked about, having, I can't remember the term, but basically using both sides of your brain. That's something you can teach yourself, by the way. That is, some people come by it naturally, just like some people are ambidextrous naturally, but you can teach yourself to use both sides of your brain, and it's a very powerful thing. Jan Hargrave, you know Jan, right, Jesse?
No.
You've met her. She's the
read how to read a body. Yes, I've met you.
Yes, body language expert. So I spent about 4 hours with Jan before she went on stage at a conference that we were at, and she actually does a exercise prior to going on stage that engages both her left brain and her right brain before she goes on stage. So she gets that automatic, she's warming up, for the lack of a better way to put it. So there's lots of cool things, that heck, maybe we'll do a webinar on that sometimes. But the reason I bring that up is, like, there's so many things in the world that you hear about. So, oh, that guy's just a good leader. No, everybody has a leadership capacity, and you can train to that. And it's true with just about everything. Now, my capacity might be different than Jesse's, but that doesn't mean that I can't increase my own personal capacity. And I think that's a very important thing. Just because it's not something you naturally fall into doesn't mean that you don't have that skill in there. You just gotta have to develop it.
And people have to realize that just because you're different doesn't mean, like what Jesse was saying, because I hear a lot of people say, oh, you have to get up early in the morning. I'm an early morning person, right? But by 7:38, I am done. I'm useless. And there are people who are really, really productive at 11:30, 12 at night. Telling them to get up at 4:30 in the morning to be successful is just a BS. It makes people feel bad. Instead of saying like, hey, find out when you're more productive and make sure you're doing a productive work at that time and not wasting your time. And then instead, everybody's like, oh, if you want to be successful, you have to get up at 4 in the morning. That's just wrong.
Right. And here's the interesting thing. And I'm going to push back on Brian for just a second. I rarely disagree with Brian, but no, I rarely disagree, but I think you might actually agree with when I say this. You said everybody has a certain capacity, right? I believe that every human being has an unlimited capacity. However, the return on investment to get to those levels gets harder and harder as you get closer to your threshold. Like, could I ever learn to dunk a basketball? I'd like to think I could. I could spend hours and years developing the strength it would take in this, and like, whereas someone else could get there a lot easier. I think I could learn to dunk one, but it would just be, the amount of effort would be so ridiculous I wouldn't have a life. You know what I mean?
Okay, I can accept that but I also think we all have, like, okay, so let's take the difference, and this is where I'm going. If you and Michael Jordan's my favorite basketball player of all time, did the exact same amount of work, the exact same things, he would be better than you.
100%.
And that's what I mean.
Okay, that's what I just want to clarify. Like, yes, we're on the same page.
So another thing that I learned, so I come from India where just like, hey, you work on your weaknesses, right? you can get better at it. So if you don't know something or you're weak at something, just study harder, and you can get there. When I was hired at Shell, in our training, they put together a team, right? And I was working on a project, my first project, and I was working on something, and it was a weekend, and my manager comes through. She's like, "What are you doing over here on the weekend?" I said, "I'm working on this." She looked at it. She said, "That's not your strength." I said, "I know. That's why I'm working on it over here on the weekend, because this is my weakness. I want to make sure that I get to it." And she says, "No, this part of the project, so I'm going to do because that's his strength. That's why we are on a team. We did not hire you to work on your weaknesses. We hired you for your strength, and you need to work." And that time, that light bulb going on, that whole life of, like, no, you need to work on your weaknesses to get better, versus like, I need to find person who is better at what I'm weak at, and then use my strength and their strength to come up or finish the project. So
Agree with that.
Yep. And it's really interesting to bring it back to visualization a little bit, that depending on how you're wired, I don't know if you guys like to work on your strengths or double down on your strengths or work on your weaknesses. I have found as I've gotten older that I actually like working on my weaknesses more now than I did when I was younger. I'm 42, so I'm somewhere in the middle, but like, I have learned to, one of the things I do to relax these days, and this is where visualization will come in, I decided to learn to play the drums. I played instruments my entire life, but never the drums, never had any training, never had any, I could never do it. So I bought a drum kit because it took so much focus for me to be able to drum that it would actually relax me because I could focus my brain on it. And so I would then sit at home and I would visualize, because I'm pretty visual and auditory, I would visualize my hands and my arms, my legs, what I was doing. And I would go through drumming exercises in my mind when I was just hanging out. And that it actually helped me learn to play the drums, just thinking about visualizing playing the drums. It was really pretty incredible. Are
you passionate about it? You're doing it because you like it, or you're just doing it because you're challenging yourself?
Oh, no. I do it because I like it too. Like it's if you ever have a long day and you get to just beat the heck out of something and it's on purpose, it's really it's fun. It's just a fun instrument.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Why are you going to tell me I shouldn't do it because I'm not passionate about it?
No, because my thing is like, if you're going to work on your weakness, work on something that you're passionate about, or don't just because, you're weak at something. So if I don't like something, I would find somebody to do it.
Yeah. No, I love it. It's really fun. I definitely enjoy it. And it's something you can do by yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas like some skills, they require other people. I can go into the garage when my kids are asleep at 11 o'clock at night. I have electronic drums with headphones on. It just sounds like tippy, tippy, tap, tippy, tap. And to me, it's like rock and roll,
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. I don't know how I got down that rabbit hole. So back to the science of visualization. Let's put it in a real estate context for a few minutes. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about a few examples. Maybe you have a client, a deal that's going badly. If you're going to visualize something, so Brian, I'm imagining he probably hears it in his head, the conversation. Before you talk to someone, do you think through it, talk through it? How does that show up for you?
Yeah, I will. And then, one of the things I think is very important is you visualize the outcome. And I think that we need to figure out what our outcome is and see that happening. And that's, so I'm just going to sit down and run through that conversation, in my head. Again, it's a conversation in this case, so definitely auditory. But again, that's just how I do it. But I'm seeing that outcome at the end as I hang up the phone. Okay, it went okay. And by the way, that doesn't mean 100% of the time it's going to work, and so, I've failed to find the thing that works 100% of the time. But let's face it, everything, think about the first time you did anything. I don't care what it was. The first time that you did anything, you probably were not an expert. There's somebody who is, and I hate that person. I'm just kidding. But, but we've all met those people. They're very few, far between. They're like, oh, I've never played basketball. Let me go out and dunk the ball. Okay, well, thanks. I'm glad that, but realistically, the majority of us, we're going to have things that we're better at. And the first time we do something is probably going to be the worst. So why not do it in your head? Visualize it, have the experience. So now I've gotten some of that out of the way, and it allows you to think through and think about possible responses that the person's going to have if we're talking about a conversation that we're concerned about having as well. So yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Priyanka, you do something similar?
Not consciously, but it happens. So my mom always called me daydreamer, but now I realize what I was doing. So when I'm negotiating, right? I'm already projecting like what's going to happen, and I'm preparing my client. So I did this yesterday. I was negotiating 2 different deals, and I'm telling my client, most probably this is what's going to happen. We are doing this, we are proposing this, they're going to counter with this, and then this is going to happen. So it was step by step, right? And that's what happened, not because I'm looking in the future, because of overall experience over the years. I have learned like how we negotiate, right? And my clients were like, oh my God, you do exactly, you nailed it. And I was like, no, all the negotiations go this way. But I was realizing I had already thought it through, right? I'm preparing myself that that's most probably the other realtor is going to come back with, and that's what I'm going to tell. So I'm preparing my clients. So I'm using it in real estate, but I did not consciously sit down like, okay, this is the deal and what's going to happen. It was just happening as I was talking to my clients, and I was visualizing. You call it visualization or whatever you want to call it. I'm just projecting like, what may happen kind of thing. So it's very similar. It prepared me. And then I was just like, if this doesn't happen this way, so maybe they will ask this. So when somebody came back and it was not, one of the realtors came back and said, we were thinking about this, but what about this? I was ready. So, and my clients were ready because we have talked about it during the, morning meeting that we had. So yeah, kind of.
But you said something I didn't hear before, which is interesting. Your mother called you daydreamer. That's visualization, right? Like,
yes,
I never thought
so
of
now
that
I
context.
realized.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So those of us, like, I'm an absolute daydreamer. I am capable of such tunnel vision that I had some people over here to my office yesterday, and they walked in, and Brian, I don't think you've ever seen my office, or Priyanka, I could turn my camera around because the part you're seeing behind me looks relatively clean. If I turn it around, it's a train wreck. It's just stuff piled everywhere. And I got an ocean view out my window. Like, it's a nice view, but it's like, people walked in and were like, how do you work in here? I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh,
Organized
I see
chaos.
I see it now. Right. Because I'm so tunnel vision, and I can disappear into my mind and think these things and visualize things. That's a skill I think I've developed over the years though.
I have the same. My desk is like piles and piles of paperwork. I know exactly where everything is. So I scream when my assistants try to clean it. I was like, no, I know where everything is. You're going to mess it up.
I love it.
And it's not tunnel vision, it's focus.
Focus.
There you go.
I like that. They called it tunnel vision, but it is focus. I like that.
Yes,
What about you?
How about me? What's what in reference to
how's your desk? Are you a clean, nice desk, or is it like?
No, I'm messy. Not proud of that, but I'm messy. So it's funny. One of the things, like, someone was coming over to look at the window. One of my window cranks is broken on my window, and I rent. So people are like, really, you rent? Yeah, I just moved here, so it's not like I'm not a long-term renter, but I moved to a different place, and I didn't know what the heck I wanted to buy or not. So anyway, and someone was coming over. So we're organizing our house. They didn't show up. And I was like, well, at least I got organized. So yes, absolutely. And the reason being is I just go, and then I stop and organize. Then I go, and then I stop and organize. And I think that a lot of us drivers are like that. Like, I could spend 10 minutes cleaning up my desk. I'm like, why? 5 minutes later, it's going to be a train wreck again. So, I like to start my day, or at least my week, organized. But for the most part, no, it's a train wreck. It's my organized chaos, and if anyone else tried to deal with it, they would go, but that's okay. I can deal with it. It sounds like y'all can too. So, and
Brian and Priyanka are two of the more successful agents I know. So guys, if you are listening and your desk is messy, it gives you hope, right? You too.
It's a good thing.
You too can be
bigger issues.
Yeah.
if it's completely organized because you're doing nothing all day long, that's much worse.
That's it.
There you go.
The reason we are unorganized because we have so much going on.
Right. Well, here's the real question. Can you just sit and visualize your desk being organized and have it get organized? I don't think it works like that, right?
If we can do that, that'll be a different product and a different time. I don't think I'm there yet. Who knows? Maybe, I like to, endless possibilities, right, Jesse? I just don't know if that's how I would use my superpower, would be to clean my desk. So
what a waste of a superpower. So Brian was asking me, we were chatting offline, like how long this webinar will be, by the way, guys. It's as long as we want to make it. So those of you, if you have questions and you want to type it in the box, let us know. We can take this conversation anywhere you want. Clearly, we enjoy having these conversations, right? The three of us are all friends in real life, but we feel like turning these conversations inside out, if there's even one tip that you pick up that can help you in your business, it's worth it, right? If it's fun to listen to stuff like this. So go ahead, Brian.
Do we want to talk about some more metaphysical stuff? Because
Yes,
I'd be
please.
happy to talk about that. So
yes, please.
I'll tell a story, and half of you won't believe me, and that's okay. So Joe Vitale, are y'all familiar with Joe Vitale? So I've been a big fan of his for years, and can't remember which one of his books because I read like 6 or 7 of his books, but one of his books talks about what he calls guided meditation, which is basically visualizing things happening to you. And say you just want to pick something. So this is 2006 I did this, and it's funny. The funny thing is I've never done it again since, but it worked. So I visualized making $10,000, and when I say that, it was like where I had no expectation. I didn't visualize going and finding a buyer and selling him a house. I just visualized making $10,000, and I did that for about 30 days. About a week after I did that, a friend of mine who worked at a mortgage company came to me and they said, "Hey, I need you to write an offer on my house for myself." They were doing some kind of switch in the title. I'll be honest, it's been so long I don't remember. All I know is a house I never saw, never went to. I spent approximately 15 minutes writing a contract. I got a check at commission at closing for over $10,000. I didn't for 15 minutes of work. So why am I saying that? I don't know. It's just kind of a neat story. But I will also say this. If you want visualization to work for you, visualize where you want to be in a year. Visualize where you want to be in 2 years, because that will be real to your brain. And your brain will go, I got to figure out how to do this thing because we're supposed to be doing this in 2 years. We're supposed to be doing this in a year. And most people don't believe in that. They're like, no, that's not going to work. But like I said at the beginning of this, and Jesse kind of reiterated, is your brain doesn't know the difference. Like one of the reasons that I actually started visualization, for those of you who don't know, I used to be a competitive rifle shooter. And so the ability to practice, for lack of a better way to do it, without having to go put all my stuff on and go and, go to a different location, do all that stuff, I could literally visualize, I could train, for lack of a better way to put it, from my bedroom. And, for me as a kid, because I was a kid when I was doing that, until I got into my 20s, but I didn't have resources because I was a kid. So, but that was one of the things that I could do, and everybody can do that. And visualization can give you, because here's the rest of the story. Worst thing that happens when you visualize is that you found a place that you want to be. And guess what? Your brain will start working on how to get you there. And that's what that's all about for me. But yeah, visualization to me is an extremely powerful tool.
Can we dive into that part? Or go ahead, Priyanka.
Sure.
Jesse and I talked about it. So this story that you told, Brian, I have this happen to me multiples and multiples of time. And it happens when something really important is needed. So when I started my career with Shell, right? So it was new, rookie, not making as much money, but I was still doing the animal rescue. And I had a dog that was really, really injured that I rescued, and I did not have enough money. It was around like, large amount of sum for me at that time, like 2,000 something for the surgery. One of my colleagues stopped by my office and she said like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I was telling her, she said like, "You look stressed." I was like, I need to come up with this money. I already have spent so much on another rescue. So, okay. And then she came back around lunchtime and she has banana envelope. She dumps it on my desk. It's like, "Hope this helps." I said, "What is it?" She said, "Oh, I just went around, told everybody, and everybody chipped in the money in there for, help." I said, "Oh, you didn't have to do that." She's like, "No, I don't know, like at least it's a start." So I started counting. I was short $851. Guess how much money was that in envelope? $851.
It's
Exactly the amount I needed, not 25 cents more, not $1 less, what I needed. And it has happened multiple times in my life. And Jesse and I were talking about how universe is blind and deaf. What you say, it gets it. But if you don't see it, if you say like, "I don't want to get hurt," it's just hearing hurt and you're going to get hurt. It doesn't see the whole picture, right? It just feels the energy. So whatever energy you're sending out, it kind of gets it and things starts happening. And I believe in quantum physics, what you were talking about. It's not just hocus pocus kind of thing. There's a lot of things that are beyond our, capability of recognizing or realizing until you experience it. As a scientist, I never believed in those kind of things. So I'm looking back when I turned like 40, 45, then I started looking back in my life. I was like, oh my God, there's so many coincidences that has happened in my life that there has to be something more, right? And I still don't believe that hocus pocus. So it has to be scientific reasoning, right? So all of us are interconnected, and what I want or need somebody else has, universe just finds a way to get it to you. Like you needed that $10,000 or you wanted that $10,000 and you were visualizing it, and universe found a way to get it to you. You know, that person in your life became that vehicle to make it happen. So I think that visualizing works like sending out that energy out to the universe, and universe figures out a way to deliver it to you. Or that's what I say.
I agree. And I'm just you too, Brian.
Mhm.
That's what I'm trying to say, how deep we go down that, because that is I mean, really, truly, I was given the analogy years ago, and I want to come back, Brian, don't let me forget. I want to come back to what you said as worst case scenario. It's putting yourself in the position of who you're being. So we'll come back to that for visualization. But for this part, the analogy given to me for this metaphysical piece we're talking about is picture a radio, like an old school radio where you tune the radio. There's radio waves floating around all the time. Like there's music around you. You can't hear it. You can't see it. You can't feel it because it's just out there. However, when you turn the radio dial to 101.7 FM and it's oldies and 107, whatever, it dials it in. That's the same energy that's out there. That's how it explained to me. And it makes sense. It's just, okay. So there's tuning frequencies that you can't see, but it's out there. So that's my visualization for that.
I see what you're saying. Yep.
Yeah, there's energy whether you want to accept it or not. I mean, it's measurable. So, you know, I don't know if you've ever done this. I noticed this one time. I'm gonna turn my phone off there. But like if you put your phone on your chest for 5 minutes, pick it up, you'll notice that the icons have moved.
Really?
Real thing.
The icons have moved?
So, and they may have changed it, but yeah, it will have an interaction with it. So the energy of your body is having an interaction with your phone.
Wow.
And like I think, and I haven't done it in a long time, but like the very things at the very top, I have an iPhone. I've actually watched them slide a little bit, and we're not talking about, it's not like they shifted or anything. I'm not anything crazy, but my point is there is an energy that whether you want to know this, whether you want to admit it, whether you think I'm like, wow, that's weird, what's going on my thing behind me.
Your energy is speaking.
Yeah, they've got energy. I think my chair is just hitting my green screen, but it's a real thing. We express energy, and apparently something's doing that. So, yeah, it's very much a real thing.
So check this out. I just Googled it because I couldn't remember his name. Have you seen Dr. Emoto's water experiment?
Oh, the water stuff is cool.
Have you seen that, Priyanka?
Yeah, a long time ago. I think 2-3 years ago.
So if you want to Google it, Google like yelling at water. And basically he took a microscope. I was going to try to put it on the screen, but I don't. It's too. I'll just see if I can share this quickly on the screen. Share.
It's very cool stuff. Yeah, there's a whole book on this.
Yeah, the hidden meaning of water. So here's water molecules where you put different emotions and say different things to the water, and it literally changes the shape of the water molecule depending on the meaning, the feeling, the words that you're screaming at it. It's really pretty incredible.
Yeah. And people ask me all the time, so when I say stuff like that, well, so what am I going to do with that? Well, it's not like you're going to, create magic with that. But what can happen is that you can understand that the things that you're doing have a much greater effect on people, places, and things than we initially thought. Like, who would have thought you could have changed the shape of water? Like, that's insane, right? Like, that's not even possible. But yeah, it's scientifically proven that it's a real thing. So that's what's great. There's things that we don't understand. But, the next time you want to yell at somebody, remember, you're going to change the shape of their water. And by the way, we're 80% water?
Yeah, pretty cool. And for those of you who are science nerds fact checking it, I've never dug deep into that. I'm taking it as face value. You want to go prove me wrong? Prove me wrong. I've looked and it seems pretty.
It's pretty legit, I think.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty scientific. So, all right, we got a few. I don't know how long we got. I'm gonna take another 10 minutes. So, because I want to go back to one thing you said, Brian.
Okay.
You said even if the visualization, because Priyanka and I touched on this last time, and I want to go deeper. Even if the visualization doesn't bring about exactly what you were hoping for, you can't manifest someone else saying this exact thing you want them to say. It still does something to who you are being, right? Tell me more about that.
When you say who are you being, like
your mindset, your confidence, your
Oh,
presence.
absolutely. So yeah, thank you. I was looking for the clarity there. Thank you about that. Yeah, I mean, first of all, it allows me to practice and it allows me to see how I'm going to react. Like I can play out multiple scenarios. Someone has a negative reaction to it, I can play that out. Someone has a positive reaction, I can play that out. And it just allows me to feel my feelings too. Because here's one of the problems that we have as salespeople, and it's funny. I've been talking about this a lot lately, and then one of my broker who's our broker for our company, out of the blue, without me even knowing, said, I want to talk about this at your team meeting. So he did. But here's the reality. Part of our job as real estate agents is to stay emotionally detached. I argue that it's our fiduciary responsibility to stay emotionally detached. So I know that's an extreme stance, but that's my stance. Because here's at the end of the day, it's one of the 5 most stressful things that people do is buy or sell a house, right? So if I'm going to go and get pissed, then I can't function as well in my job. Because here's the reality. The buyer's pissed, the seller's pissed, we got all these other people. Somebody has to be the person who goes, all of that's true. Now, what are we going to do about it? And, but if we're sitting all this time doing this, we can't do that. So where did that come from? It came from the fact that I can experience those emotions. And again, let's talk about this. The first time I experience an emotion, it's different. And I can work through that. And so now if I have that emotion during that conversation, it doesn't have to take over. So, it's just, I hate to say it, it's part of it's just practice, and I did say that, the other thing I thought, where I thought you were going to go with this was, the worst thing that happens is that we start to focus on it. That is so important. Whatever we focus on will expand. So if you're focusing on this objective out here and you're visualizing and it becomes important to you, your mind will begin to work on that project. So 0.06% of the information we intake is happens on a conscious level. That means 99.94% of the information you're intaking is happening on a subconscious level. Why is that important? Well, because basically you got to tell your mind what to work on. So visualization also tells your mind what's important to you, and it gets your mind working on that for you. So
I love that. Priyanka, you want to jump in on that?
Except the part where he says, like, don't get emotionally involved. Every transaction, I'm so emotionally involved and invested. Brian, I told Jesse this before a couple of times. I have clients who say, like, we were scared that you're going to move in with us in the house because you kept saying, we are not doing this. We are not going to do this. Or we are going to go this way. And I am, every transaction is like, I am buying or selling a house. So that is really hard for me to separate my emotions. But that's what my clients love about me, that, oh my God, we trusted you 100% because we were like looking at you as like, oh my God, she thinks this is her house. So just different approach. And none of us are wrong. I mean, you are just so calm and collected. I bet your clients like, oh, thank God Brian was on our side. He made the whole process easy. And my clients are more like, oh, thank God Priyanka is, our realtor because she made it her own. Like, she treated it like a transaction. And neither of us are wrong.
I will say this. There's oftentimes you do not want to be in the room when I hang up the phone. That's when my real emotions will come out.
That's funny.
Just being honest.
That's good. But that's amazing emotional control. I know that's probably a whole separate topic, but that is a skill to develop as well.
It is. And at one point in time, I was a hothead, and many of us were. Generally speaking, I'm generalizing, but the younger you are, the more likely you are to be a hothead because you're older and you're like, it takes too much energy. So
or I think even if you develop the skill, like when I've had less sleep and I'm tired, when I'm stressed and I have more things going on, I'm more likely to react in a reactive way, even as I get older, right? You agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, it's about being in control. And I do think that that's my responsibility because, how many times have you heard a client say, well, that seller, they're just a jerk. And then the agent goes, yeah, that seller is a jerk. I argue that is causing the transaction to blow up versus, what? I don't know where the seller's at. There's a good possibility they were stressed out. They're having, we don't know what's going on with them. Let's go back to them and see, perhaps they'll have a different approach. We had a guy one time call into one of our phone lines and an agent answered and he didn't think that it was a 1-800 number. So there wasn't very clear that an agent was going to answer that. And he cursed her out up one side, down the other, and then hung up on her. Well, most agents would return the favor, at least again, I'll tell you what this agent did. She sent him a text message that says, "I'm sorry you're having a bad day. If there's anything I can do to help you with any real estate, please let me know." By the way, that guy closed with her.
Wow.
So, and that's what I'm talking about. Here's not what I'm suggesting. Like Priyanka says, I'm very emotionally invested in my clients getting to closing. I just don't want to be emotional with them when they're on that roller coaster that goes on. But I feel like my clients know that I care, and because that is important. People want to know you care about them. Absolutely. And I'm sure they know that from you, Priyanka, just from what I know about you.
No, and I tell my client, like, I do not over communicate. I do not communicate. Though sometimes they say like, "Hey, I'm stressed." I was like, "No, I will call you and tell you when to start stressing. That's why you hired me. So if you don't hear from me, that means everything is good." And I do not call my clients when the things are going rough. I usually try to find like, okay, this is a problem, this is a solution, or this is a problem. We have 3 options. And then I call my clients like, okay, don't freak out. This is what's going on. We have a problem. But before you freak out, this is a 3 solution. Which one would you like to go with? And from day one, I tell them like, do not stress about anything, because when there's something to stress about, I'm going to call you and say, start stressing. And that really helps them. I seriously do.
I believe
it's
you.
like, what's the use of stressing? Like so many realtors like, oh, I tell my client everything. I was like, my clients find out everything at the closing table, not before then. So why would I tell her like, the other realtor is having problem, or seller is creating a problem, or buyer is creating a problem? That's why I am the shield for my client. They do not need to know this, right? Why would we stress them out? And so many realtors believe in like, oh, I disclose everything to my clients. No, you're stressing them out. Mm-hmm. Do your job, protect them.
Absolutely.
It's so interesting. I've never thought of it that way. The emotional bodyguard. So for Brian though, I want to go back to one thing before we run out of time.
Sure.
Because Brian is an incredible, if you guys don't know his background, Brian is an incredible NLP trainer, a coach who teaches in the world. NLP is a neuro-linguistic programming. It's like a sales, it's a way to connect with clients and to persuade people to do things that are in their best interest, obviously, not trying to manipulate. It's persuasion.
Yes, absolutely.
You said something, you said something that I want to put a tactical thing in here in the emotional landscape. You said if a client says, you're representing the buyer, and they say, that seller's sure being a jerk, and you stay really calm. I actually think there's a step in the middle, and I think you will agree. They say that seller's sure being a jerk, and you go, I get how frustrating that might be that seller's being that way.
Yes.
You don't have to agree. So you agree with that?
Yeah. So what Jesse's talking about is he's establishing rapport with that person and mirror matching them. Basically, you're mirror matching their tone and frustration in that scenario, right? Is that basically what you're doing there? And absolutely. And that's okay. I am okay with that, because you want to build that rapport. I just don't want to stay in the conversation. Absolutely. It seems like it's very I can completely understand how frustrating this might be from you now. With all that in mind, what are we going to do to move forward? And so here's the thing about mirror matching. And this is one of the things that makes me laugh. Like, there's so many people out there who talk about mirror matching with body language. And can you imagine, because as you see, I can't talk without moving my hands. Can you imagine someone sitting across from me trying to mirror match everything that I'm doing? I would think they were a wackadoo, because, by the way, the second I stop talking, my hands drop. So it doesn't make sense. So, but mirroring and matching is important. I mean, there's actual things in our brain that's called mirror neurons, and they were established long time ago. I don't know how many years, but basically they were to teach people, because we didn't have communication. I'm talking about cavemen, literally. We didn't have those skill sets. So basically, safe equaled same. And that's just the way it worked. Like, you're doing the same things that I would do, you're safe. You're doing different things that I would do, you're not safe. And again, we're talking about thousands and thousands of years ago, before even, language was developed. And guess what? Those things didn't go away, which is great if you understand how to use it. So yeah, absolutely. Mirror match, tone, volume, frustration level, 100%. Just don't stay there.
Right. The way I look at it, and I'm guessing, Priyanka, this is what you do naturally. If the person is mad at the seller, you as the agent are not getting mad at the seller, but you're mad along with your client, right? That's the thing, is you're empathetic. Like, I used to be great on the phone with expireds, because someone would call me and be like, you effing realtors, you didn't blah, blah. And I would go, imagine if you had to work with these realtors every day, right? Like, you just get right in there with them. And they're like, oh, like, yeah. I won't go into my scripts, but like, I used to have a lot of fun with it, because you're mad with them, not at them. That's the difference.
Yep. And again, you're not going to live there, because I'm
No.
going to guess that Jesse did that and then said, well, how can I serve you?
Right. That's exactly,
because
immediately drops down to like, all right, so let's talk about what really matters to you. Come on, let's break it down. All right. I got one last thing. If we have time, we want to talk about. Do you guys have any other things you want to cover today?
No, I just appreciate the invite to be around, and good group of people.
Cool. So check this out.
Build 21.
No. So check out the handwritten diagram here, right? So I was at this conference last week that Tony Robbins spoke at. I don't know if you like Tony Robbins or don't like him, but he said something that actually ties into visualization. And so I have it on my screen on my other monitor because that was my handwritten notes. And I quickly Googled it a minute ago when someone was talking, like, oh, I want to show this. Can you guys see this on the screen? Have you ever seen this potential action results belief circle before?
I've not, but I've seen a very similar thing that Tony does. That's the same concept. So I'm familiar with the concept.
So I just thought this is a cool action-oriented step to leave people with in the world of visualization. So Brian already mentioned today potential, right? We all have an amount of potential. So if you want to once you tap into that potential, you create a massive amount of action. And then that massive action produces your results. And when you start getting good results, that fuels your belief and attitude, which then allows you to have a stronger belief and attitude, which then it helps you hit your potential, goes in a circle. So the challenge was that he threw out was, if it's a circle, where do you start? If you're not getting results now, how do you have the belief and attitude? And what he said was, because I wrote it down in that pad I just held up, what he said was, he said, you have to give yourself or give someone you're working with, you give them the results in advance. And the way to do that is visualization. Using visualization, you give yourself the results. Go ahead, Brian.
I would love to piggyback on that. So several years ago, I did a presentation, I guess we can call it. And the name of that presentation was Motivation is a Myth. And it comes from where we're talking about here. And so here's what I mean by this. Are you motivated just when you get out of bed in the morning? Sometimes I've been motivated. I'm sure the three of us can honestly say there's days we get out of bed and we're like, yes. What happens on the days that you're not? And then, you hear this all the time. How do I get motivated? Or how do I motivate my clients? How do I motivate the agents who work for me? The answer, believe it or not, is exactly what Jesse just said. I'll piggyback on that, is you have to have the feeling of accomplishing the thing that you want to do. So, if you want to have a bank account that has $1 million on it, get up every morning and visualize that bank account with $1 million in it every day and spend some time on that. And guess what? Your brain will go, yeah, we really want that. And now I'm motivated for it. Because and when I say that, and I'm sure if Tony talked about this, when you do visualization, if you want to do really good, we're talking about getting into all of those senses. What's it smell like when I walk in the room? What's it taste like? What does it feel like? How does it sound? Because the more of your senses that you can tie into it, I know we're talking about visualization, but it's all the senses. The more you can tie it into it, the more real it is, the more you've had that experience. And let's face it, whatever the thing is that gives you that high, that's what you're going for. And you can create it, which will create the motivation. Most people think it's the other way around. So that's, 100%.
It's exactly why a daydreamer like Priyanka, right? Mm-hmm. It works so well because she is so into the daydream that those visualizations, her goals are so real, and then they happen.
You can feel it. When they talk about you can feel it or taste it, that's exactly what daydreaming is, right? You want something and you're sitting there and daydreaming about it, and you'll get there. I have achieved the goals in my life that I did not think they were possible, but I kept daydreaming about it and things kept happening to get me there. So I can take credit I planned it and I put the steps in and I got there. So many things had to happen for me to get there. But I think that those things happened because I kept daydreaming about it.
I think this is a good place to wrap it up, guys. You agree? I think this is a fun conversation. Please drop a comment in the Facebook group, on YouTube, wherever you're watching this. If you have questions for us, we'll be tagged in the post, and happy to have a further chat. That train horn says it's time to wrap it up. You heard that train horn there?
I thought maybe that was something you were playing. That was impressive.
Nope. That's the train out my window. That is apparently the time. I try to mute myself out sometimes when it's at the end of it. I miss the timing now. There you go.
No, it's perfect. I love it.
Brian, great to see you. Priyanka,
good to see you, Priyanka. Jesse.
Same here, Brian.
All right,
Bye,
y'all
guys.
take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.